You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, and we are extremely glad you're here and want to recognize the fact that the premise of this show has just greatly increased and heightened in terms of where it should be on the public awareness scale. That's all I'm going to say. And at this time, this show, it'll become very evident as we go forward. Speaking of going forward, before I do that, I must introduce or let everybody know who is in the Hilltop Studios with us. I am joined by...
I'm a surefire.
And...
Uncle Bachi.
Full house, ready to rock and roll.
Ready.
Completely prepared. Everybody except me.
Speak for yourself. I was going to say, speak for yourself.
We are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. Got a Facebook page out there by that name. Go out there, like us. Follow us on Twitter is by far the best way to keep up with the activities. The Twitter handle is at Doc Owen Show, spelled exactly the same way. And we have we'll call it a budding blog that continues to grow. Uncle Bachi is putting absolutely tons of information out there. Yours truly has been a little remiss in terms of posting things, but I will get it done. And we have free apps for both the iPhone and the Android. Cha-ching. You may go to your respective store and download, search for Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW, and download our app, at which point you will have access not only to this live broadcast every Thursday night, but it lives as a podcast. You can access the podcast on the app if you prefer, or you can get to it on our blog, docowenshow.com. So there's all sorts of ways to listen to the activity. We begin, and that, by the way, was our commercial announcement for the show, unless I happen to circle back and remind you. We begin the show every week the exact same way. We have a moment of inspiration provided by Ms. Surefire. We then have Today in History provided by Uncle Bachi. And then I round out with a leadership quote or so. So, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight, as usual, my quote here comes from brainyquote.com. That's BRAINY quote.com. And tonight's quote is from a gentleman by the name of C.S. Lewis.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he was a British novelist. He did several things, which also included holding an academic position at both Oxford and Cambridge universities.
Wow.
Yep. And I picked his quote kind of, in the feel of what's happening, especially in our hometown. His quote is, "History isn't just a story of bad people doing bad things. It's quite as much a story of people trying to do good things, but somehow something goes wrong."
Nice. Typical C.S. Lewis
Absolutely.
style.
Good.
Make you think. Good job.
Yeah.
Well, good job. Perfect. Uncle Bachi?
Uncle Bachi right
here. Did
here.
anything happen in history?
Yeah, one thing at least. In 1935, FDR...
Franklin Delano Roosevelt,
right,
for those of you that don't know the acronym.
Mm-hmm. He signed the Neutrality Act.
I didn't think they had the internet.
Neutrality, not internet, neutrality. Isn't it interesting that George Washington started off with neutrality, and here we are almost to World War II, and FDR is claiming neutrality?
Well, he waited long enough for people to forget.
Well, yeah. For a country that's been in so many wars, I mean, what's this neutrality stuff? Anyway, but that's what happened today.
In 1935.
1935.
So he was spinning our heads between World War I and World War II.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
That we weren't going to get involved in another one. Mm-hmm. All right. This is from a famous rock star. Actually, a group. No, it's not. It's just close to it. Fellow by the name of George Santayana. Not Santana. Santayana. Santayana. Who was a U.S. citizen, Spanish heritage, philosopher, 1863 to 1952. Okay? Goes quite well with the inspirational note we had about C.S. Lewis.
Awesome.
And it is basically the core of tonight's show. Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it.
Oh, yeah.
Almost all of us have heard that phrase. If you have not, you have now. Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. So I have heard that phrase all my life, had no idea who to attribute it to. So in keeping with the Doc Owen Show tradition, I looked it up.
Well, that's what.
I
That's
Googled it, and there he was. Boom. Real easy to do.
That's right.
And that basically is exactly what we're going to push forward with tonight. And I told you at the very top of the show, the very tip top of the show, about the heightened interest that's going to grow around Doc Owen Show. We are known, our tagline is delivering truth to youth. And as a part of that, we always go down a history lane, if you will, in the first few minutes of the show, right after we've done our standard little three-piece intro that each one of us provide. We break into a thing called Bocce's Brief. And that Uncle Bocce provides he is the show historian, and he digs deep to come up with the facts and information. And by the way, I'm going to do an on-air reminder that Uncle Bocce's going to, I don't know that it's really an apology, but it's a response to one of our listeners that questioned one of our facts. And as a matter of fact, he was right to question it. He knew a little nit of history that you have to dig deep to find. So it took Bocce a couple of weeks actually to find it, to go into page 6 or 7 of the Google search. And anyway, it didn't take you that long.
No, I just forgot it last week.
It has taken us that long to remember it, so we'll be sure and bring it up. But the point is, as my quotes from George Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. This show is dedicated to helping you, the audience, understand and remember the past from a factual perspective, not an emotional perspective, not what you wish it were, and not what you think it is, but what we actually research, find out, and deliver to you as truth. Some of it is not pretty. I get that. But it's the truth. And so we learn from our mistakes just like we learn from our successes. Matter of fact, if you're smart, you learn more from a mistake than you do a success. Having said that, Uncle Bocce, where are we in history tonight? President number 2 or number 3?
We're on number 3. Thomas.
Wow, we're just blazing through these guys.
Wow.
Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Go for it. You're on.
Well, first of all, Ed, if you're listening, all I was able to find out about the difference in the dates when George Washington was inaugurated and when John Adams was inaugurated as vice president, you're right.
He was.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. But I could not find anything anywhere that said what happened during those 9 days.
So let's give everybody.
So I don't think anything happened, but
let's bring everybody up to date. We started this presidential series. We spend 2 weeks on each president, running up to the election, and then after they've been elected, their term in office, and we're walking through all of the presidents. And the reason we're doing that, it was really brought to the top of our minds by all of the pushback that's going on with the president of the United States. Repeat after me. Donald J.
Trump.
is our president. But he's getting so much pushback. I wanted to know, at least beyond the 60 years that I've been following it, which is the 60 years I've been following it, this is the most drastic pushback I've ever seen for the longest period of time. So prior to that, historically, has this sort of thing gone on? That's what prompted the presidential research, just to bring everybody up to date.
That's right.
And so we started with president number one. The first president of the United States was, everybody knows it, George Washington. We had a listener that said, not so fast.
Right.
Right? And
Yes.
and so Ed came and chatted with Ima on the screen and said, no, that's not true. Tell Uncle Bocce to do his homework. And so what we found out was that John Adams was George Washington's vice president.
Correct.
And he actually got inaugurated 9 days before George Washington.
That is
Right?
true. And
So for 9 days, John Adams was technically the president of the United States. But we don't know why that 9 days occurred.
right.
Do
If
we?
anybody knows,
I mean,
please let me know.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to know. So, but it's those sort of nits that may not matter to anybody else but the three of us, and obviously Ed for some strange reason. But it's important for the audience to know, for the people that are fans of the Doc Owens Show, to know the extent to which we'll go to make sure that our facts are correct.
That's right.
That's the point to me.
Absolutely.
All right. Having said that, now your time's up, Uncle Bocce. We really appreciate your
Okay.
contribution tonight. No, I'm joking with you. Go for it, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thomas Jefferson. So far, he is the one that had the highest IQ.
The Thomas Jefferson,
The Thomas Jefferson.
third president of the United States.
That's correct.
Wow, I didn't know he was that old.
Yeah, he had a IQ score, or estimated, of 153.75.
Oh, but our young people today are so much smarter than that.
Oh yeah, and there are still some that are smarter than that. So we'll get there. Thomas Jefferson was very different in his perspective as far as the government was concerned. There were a lot of things going on between Thomas Jefferson, who was a Democratic Republican, and John Adams, who was a Federalist, Alexander Hamilton, who was a Federalist, and Aaron Burr.
Back
as
all the
well.
way up to the beginning of that
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay.
You referred to a Democratic Republican.
Yes.
Now, how is our young audience supposed to understand that?
Well, they only lasted a few years.
I can imagine.
They lasted,
They
I
had a
think,
lot
through
of
3 or 4
self-conflict.
presidents, and that was it.
They were
Until Jackson.
they were very conflicted individuals. Okay.
Yes, they really were. But there was so much animosity between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, as we'll see, because Aaron Burr became his vice president in his first term.
That's because, folks, remember, if you're just now joining us, back in the day, they didn't run as a ticket.
That's correct.
They ran independently, so you could have one party elected as president, the other party elected as vice president.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll get to that. This is
I'm
very
sure.
interesting. Let's look
I'm
a little
sure.
bit at his education, since he was such a brilliant man. He started in school, in an English school, at the age of 5, and then he went to the Latin school. Remember when we talked about schools way B?
Yeah.
You know, the first kinds of schools were the English schools, which are more like a grammar school, and then there was the Latin school,
Right.
which taught the classics.
Right.
Okay, so it was a
Right.
little bit different.
Which I didn't get till high school. Go ahead.
Exactly. So from the age of 9 to 14, he hooked up with this guy named Reverend James Maury, Maury, and he was running a school, and Jefferson said about him, he is a correct classical scholar. See where I'm going with this?
I do.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay. So he continued his studies with Reverend Maury until he entered William and Mary College. And he got his degree his degree at the age of 17. Okay, so
Must have taken some time off.
maybe, but that wasn't the end of his education. From then he met a gentleman named George Wythe. That's Wythe. George Wythe was a scholar on the law, so he tutored Jefferson, and Jefferson actually did get his law degree. He had a lot of honorary degrees and memberships, like the honorary degree laws from Yale, from Harvard, from Princeton, all the British Board of Agriculture. He had a lot of honorary degrees.
Yeah,
the man was kind of a brilliant person. Okay, he had a nickname. We know that Thomas Jefferson was 6 feet 5.5 inches tall.
We know that.
Taller than George Washington. And so they called him Long Tom. You got that? Okay.
Okay, I got that. Sorry.
Okay.
Did we need a drum roll for that?
No, we don't.
Okay.
The party that was
6'5"
affiliated.
in his day was huge.
Did he play basketball?
No. I don't know. I don't even think they invented basketball yet.
Oh, okay.
His party affiliation was Democratic Republican, and their only opposition were the Federalists.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
But Thomas Jefferson was more inclined to decentralize power, whereas the Federalists wanted a very strong central government.
As their name implies.
So they butt heads all the time.
Sure.
They just were.
As they do today.
Of course, he was from Virginia. Now, here's a big subject, because what I found out about the man as his religion,
Yeah.
a lot of people always say that our founding fathers,
Yeah.
they're a bunch of deists or atheists or whatever. Well, Jefferson was raised an Anglican, okay? But he said, question with boldness, even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. He did not like talking about his religion. Okay,
I can relate to that.
When you look through his papers, again, remember last week I said it doesn't matter whether they were Christians or not.
Right.
But in his writings, the man believes in the ancient principles, the principles of the Bible, the principles of Christianity, and of Locke and all the the Great Awakening and all that, replete with those principles. Okay, so he may not have been an actual Christian, but he wasn't really a deist.
Got it.
Okay, so he was born April 13th, 1743 in Albemarle. He died July 4th, 1826, which was the same day that John Adams died.
Yep. July 4th.
Yeah, they were bitter rivals, remember. Okay, we'll see that. His resting place is Monticello in Charlottesville, Virginia. Oh, Charlottesville. How interesting. That's where the University of Virginia is, too. Okay? There
are no coincidences.
Yeah, there aren't. Everything seems to come right in at the right time.
Coincidences.
He had 6 children. He held many positions. He was the 3rd president of the United States. He was the 2nd vice president of the United States. He was the 1st United States Secretary of State. He was the United States Minister of France. He was the 2nd governor of Virginia. He was a Virginia delegate to the Congress of Confederation. That was the Continental Congress.
Right.
Not to confuse it. And he was a Virginia delegate to the 2nd Continental Congress.
All that before he was 40.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Right?
Man.
Okay. Now, the election of 1800. Jefferson contended once more against the Federalist John Adams. So he ran pretty much against John Adams.
Okay.
And again, those two they at the beginning, they were very fierce enemies. Okay. Adams' campaign.
Well, let's paint the right picture.
Yeah.
relative to today's times. When we say they were fierce enemies.
But the feelings that they had were definitely personal.
Interesting.
Because they believed in two different methods of government.
I understand that.
Okay.
So that was but it was that two different beliefs in what our government should look like was the root of their animosity for each other.
Right. And Adams was not one to forget. You know, he was, remember we said he's very bold and very opinionated. Okay. So what happened with Adams' campaign, it was weakened by some unpopular taxes that he got passed. Right. There was vicious Federalist infighting over his actions in the Quasi-War. Remember we talked about that? Yep. The kind of like war with France in the Caribbean. Right. They didn't agree on that. And the Democratic Republicans pointed, as you know that they would have, the Alien and Sedition Acts, which actually probably cost Adams a second term.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now the Federalists charged that Jefferson was a godless libertine enthralled to the French, and he did like the French over the British. Historian Joyce Appleby said the election was one of the most acrimonious in the annals of American history. So they
Between
really
Adams and Jefferson.
Adams and Jefferson. And
they really went at.
You throw in Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr.
Well, this was a very critical time for our country.
Yeah, absolutely,
and
it was.
So these leaders, they were duking it out.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
So the Democratic Republicans ultimately won more electoral college votes, and we'll look at that more specifically. What happened was that because of the system, the Electoral College, there was a tie in the 1800 election. Okay, that tie was between Jefferson and Aaron Burr, with John Adams coming in third.
Oh.
But there was a tie, 73 to 73.
Right.
As far as, so what ended up happening is they had to pass it on to the House of Representatives.
Right.
The House of Representatives, it took them 36 votes.
Wow.
36 before they decided that Thomas Jefferson was the winner. Now, what happened in the background here is Alexander Hamilton did not like Aaron Burr at all, even though they were Federalists. So he worked against Aaron Burr, thinking that Jefferson was the least of the two evils.
Okay.
So Hamilton worked in the background to get more votes for Jefferson.
Right.
And so it finally turned out that Jefferson was the president and Aaron Burr was the vice president. They did not get along at all. In fact, Jefferson just squoze him out, never used him, never mentioned his name, never talked about him. He couldn't handle it.
Kind of like Biden.
Yeah. And then in the second term, Thomas Jefferson ran again. This time he picked a running mate, even though, his running mate was Charles Pinckney, or George Clinton, I'm sorry, George Clinton from New York. And at this time, he got 162 of the electoral votes. So obviously he won.
Slam dunk.
Slam dunk. No problem. So people really liked him.
Okay.
Okay? So we'll go next week and we'll take it up from there.
Okay.
My name, Uncle Bachi, UNCLEBACI at DocOwenShow.com. And I'm waiting for you.
Keep them coming.
I challenge you.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
And I know you've told us this, but you teach us a lot, and so some I remember, some I don't. Alien and Sedition Act.
Yes.
That sounds similar to immigration.
Yes. Exactly.
Reform or whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We talked. There were 4 actually acts in those acts.
Right. And
Jefferson got rid of 3 of them,
okay.
but he kept the 4th one.
Okay.
We can talk about that next week.
All right. In generalities, if you can, pull yourself out of history for a minute.
Yeah.
All right. So, Alien and Sedition Act was strong because of what we'd gone on with England and trying to set our own way, et cetera, et cetera. It was it very strong in terms of its requirement. In other words, we shut down on immigration. We made it tough for people to get in, right?
Yeah, immigration went from 2-year wait to a 15-year wait.
Excuse me. And okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
That was one part of it.
Similarities to today? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's more difficult to become a citizen now than it was back then.
Well, but I'm talking about Adams came forth with this, and you implied, if you didn't say,
it was
that it was unpopular,
very unpopular,
and it cost him. It could have cost him his second term.
Yeah. A lot of people were put in jail because of it.
Okay. Is there a lesson to be learned there with Trump, with what Trump is trying to do?
No, they're entirely two different things.
That's what I was getting at.
They're entirely different. Adams really wanted to crush aliens and crush people who spoke against the government. He wanted them in jail.
So it has nothing to do with their immigration status.
Not necessarily.
That's what I was getting. That's what I wanted to understand.
Yep. Yeah, that's why it's alien and sedition.
Well, I got that, but when I asked you the question the first time, was it similar? You said yes. So now we've drawn out what the similarities are not, which is why it was so unpopular.
That's right.
Because it sounds like it was very restrictive of people's First Amendment rights, freedom of speech.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's where I'm there. That's what I was looking for. Good job, Bocce.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bocce.
You going to come back next week?
Yeah, I'll be here next week.
You're going to stop by? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll be here.
We'll do it again. Okay, so for those of you who are not aware, which is probably most of you, you wouldn't have any reason to be aware. San Antonio, Texas, has tonight, said sometime late this afternoon, voted to take down a statue of of William Travis, right?
Yes.
In
that's correct.
Travis Park in downtown San Antonio. But earlier this week, they voted, one of the school districts voted to change the name of Robert E. Lee High School. All right? Not just because of San Antonio, but because of what's going on around the country with this rampant, out of control, nonsensical, bullshigger approach to whitewashing, choice of words, totally intentional, you dummies. Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
Have any of you in the audience, particularly our young audience, read an author by the name of George Orwell? Does that name ring a bell to anybody under 25 years of age? I bet you the answer is no, it does not. I bet you that literature, that information, those works have been taken out of high school education. I don't know that for a fact.
Along with a lot of other things.
Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But those were required reading, quote, back in the day. All right? There were 2 books by George Orwell. The first of which, and by the way, they know they're doing wrong taking down these statues because they're doing it in the absolute dark of night. And I don't mean 9 p.m. or around 10 o'clock news time. They're coming in and removing this stuff at 1, 2, and 3 o'clock in the morning because they fear the backlash. Folks, if you fear the backlash, then you're doing something wrong.
That's right.
You know you're doing something wrong when you are worried about the backlash.
Yep.
This is a minority voice across the country. This is a minority voice. Listen to me. Mm-hmm. This is 1 or 2% of the public trying to destroy history so that they might rewrite it more to their liking or simply start over. Mm-hmm. If they had their way, whoever follows President Donald J. Trump will be president number 1. So they can start all over again and not have to worry about these people that have come before him or her. It's nonsense.
It is nonsense.
It's
It's
crap.
worse. It's worse than nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
It's
beyond aggravating.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before I get into those 2 books, why don't you, as you're listening to the show, why don't you get on your Google machine and look up 1984 by George Orwell and look up Animal Farm by George Orwell. All right? Those were 2 books written in 1945 and 1949. 1945 and 1949, warning us of 2017, explaining to us about 2017, based on what was going on at the time in Germany and Russia, of destroying their own history.
That's right.
So that no one could, so that there would be no evidence. There'd be no teaching it in school of the greatness of Thomas Jefferson, like Uncle Bocce was just talking about. The godliness of George Washington and the founding of this country. It's going to be left to folks like us, the 3 of us, and you, the audience, to do the teaching. But there'll be no evidence to which we can back up our claims. And eventually we will be gone. Think about it. It is scary stuff.
It is.
The name of the show is History is Over.
Yep.
As far as I'm concerned, it's been bugging me all week long. And because of an inability to do anything about it. Total inability. We are headed for civil war. Their removal of history means that we are... I never thought it would occur in my lifetime, but the speed with which they're tearing down our history tells me differently.
Yes, it does.
That, combined with my good health and attitude, tells me that I may have to see it and I may have to live through it.
It might come to that the only people in this country who are going to know our true history will be homeschooled children. They're the guys out there. I commend you. They're going to be the only ones. And whoever we are connecting with out there in radio land, in internet land, that's good. And it's all part of a big plan.
Oh, I know.
It's a big plan.
That's what bothers me the most about it, is because it appears to be isolated, but it's not. Even if they don't have project planning meetings every Friday at noon, they're all connected. They all read the same emails. They all read and one of the things that my education taught me was we self-select our information. We have a tendency to self-select. If you're a conservative, you read the same stuff as other conservatives. All right? And you know this from your computer. If you read online information, once you sign up for one email list or once you go to one website, similar information starts coming up on your computer. If you buy something at a certain store, certain information starts coming up on your screen constantly. They know what we're doing. I get it. Well, that means we self-select because I go to certain, I read this, I read that, then I just get a ton. I guarantee you I get over 300 emails a day from various and sundry, air quote, news sources. None of them liberal. None of them are outside my sphere of, what the computer thinks is my interest.
That's right.
All right. So I will tell you, I make it a point to go check on the other side.
Absolutely. Same as I do.
You follow me?
Yep.
Not that I am going to convert, nor am I going to try to convert them. But awareness is part of what you need to do. So if you go read their stuff, taking down these monuments is part of their stuff. When they're chopping off the head of a statue of Christopher Columbus, that is pure, absolute, dumbass ignorance, completely out of control.
That's right.
And most of the rest of this stuff is too.
Just check the source.
So they changed the name of Robert E. Lee High School. They haven't changed the name.
Not yet.
They haven't picked a new one.
Right. That's correct.
But they've voted to change the name, that it's okay. And the reason...
Not the students.
What?
They didn't ask the students.
Hold on a minute.
Well, yeah.
It was the student... They did it because the students wanted it.
Okay. If you say so, that's not what I read.
They did not get public opinion involved. But the reason that the school board said they did it was because the students wanted it. So who's running the show here? Is it the kids? High school students? So what are they going to run, a contest?
I don't know.
They're going to have a reality show, name that high school, and it's going to have a different name at the beginning of every year? That's going to wreak havoc on their mascots.
That's right.
There's just so many out there.
Millions of dollars.
Watchy, the report I read said it was the student.
All right, maybe.
Now, they did not take public opinion. They didn't let the parents get involved.
And they didn't ask the alumni. So
That's right.
Let's see.
So let's talk about Robert E. Lee. Who was Robert E. Lee?
Yeah.
Why would they take down a statue of Robert E. Lee? Because he was a Confederate general? Right?
That's right.
How did he get to become... And does that automatically make him a slave owner?
Nope.
It does not, right?
Nope. He was anti-slavery.
Right. He also was the primary reason that those students at Robert E. Lee High School are Americans. He was totally instrumental in the Mexican-American War.
Yep.
All right? He was the number 2 graduate of West Point who could do whatever he wanted to do, and at that time he joined the prestigious Army Corps of Engineers. And he was sent as part of blah, blah, blah. He did a bunch of engineering work, got very well recognized for it, and they sent him to Texas, where he built a road 600 miles from San Antonio. Hold on, I got the exact information here. From San Antonio, Texas, to Saltillo, Mexico.
Oh, wow.
A distance of over 600 miles, so that the Americans could press the war.
It's like from San Antonio to Dallas almost.
And what was going twice that.
Yeah.
And so what was going on there was that Texas declared that it was a republic, an independent republic, in 1836.
Right.
That's when the Mexican War started, and we had won the Alamo, and we started pushing Mexico back to the Rio Grande River. Right? That was our line of demarcation that we were shooting for. Okay? Well, Lee was very instrumental in that. And not only was he instrumental in that, he then received orders to report to Major General Winfield Scott. And by the way, you have no idea the number of very high-level generals in the American War between the states that were trained in the Mexican-American War. Okay?
Right.
Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee, you can name them. When you know these names, and their schools and their statues are dotted all over this country. It has nothing to do with the Confederacy or slavery or anything else. These guys made sure we had a country. And all of you frickin' snowflakes that are tearing down their statues are idiots. You're
right.
pawns. You're being used by people that do not mean you well, or they would be teaching you something instead of teaching you how to tear down a statue.
That's right.
Whew.
Tell us how you really feel.
I can't.
You can't, I know.
Because I'm on the radio.
I was gonna say you hear a lot of beep 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 beep.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that I'm on the internet radio and I can say any damn well thing I choose. But our show is carried still on the internet, but I believe it or not, I do have a filter, which I wish sometimes I didn't. And matter of fact, sometimes I don't have, but it's got to be not on the air. Let's put
Like
it
they
that way.
say, sometimes you have to leave tact at the door.
It just says, all in all, Lee emerged from the Mexican War a proven combat leader who enjoyed the special confidence of the ranking officer of the United States Army. Mm-hmm. So he emerged at the top of it. He helped. He was transferred to Brazos, Texas. He helped us very, very much win that war.
That's right.
Robert E. Lee. Long before he went home to serve for his state, which happened to be on the Confederate side. And it had nothing to do with slavery.
That's right.
How many times this show has got to tell you that? Tell your friends that it was called the War Between the States. A civil war is any war self-contained within a single country. There are civil wars all over the world.
Right.
Our war was a war between the states over states' rights.
And secession. Yeah.
But
state
but the South seceded because of states' rights. They were imposing the same economic hardships on the South that the British imposed on New England
There you go.
that you've just talked to us about for a year and a half.
Absolutely.
There was no difference when they closed down the Charleston Harbor
That's right.
than when the British closed down Boston.
And Robert E. Lee is definitely given a raw deal. He really is.
They don't know what
They
they're
don't
doing.
know. I know they don't.
And the point with changing the high school is this was done by the school board.
Who should know better.
Supposedly intelligent adults who don't have the cojones to stand up to a 16-year-old punk.
Right.
Sorry, I don't mean to raise my voice. Actually, I do mean to raise
Yes,
my
you
voice.
do.
It is aggravating.
Yes.
If it were in person, I would be just this animated.
No, you'd
That's
be more
true.
animated.
So then, after they do that with Robert E. Lee High School, our venerable city council and mayor, what a bunch of jerks.
Yes.
What a bunch of jerks.
Yep.
Have decided to take down the statue of Travis in Travis Park. All right? I haven't even done the research on Travis because I know what the result is going to be. And that is, it's bull sugar. It has nothing to do with anything in reality. What it has to do with is what Uncle Bocce mentioned a few minutes ago. It's a grand plan that was laid out for us in a little book called 1984 by George Orwell. All right? George Orwell said that he told the story of what was going on in 1945 Germany and Russia through fiction. But it was a real story, right? Which was first? Was Animal Farm first? Hold
I
on.
don't even remember. I know.
I don't know.
Animal Farm was first.
Okay.
I'll tell you a little story. You need to read Animal Farm, where you'll come to understand that the pigs are the smartest thing on earth.
Yeah.
All right?
Right.
They run the show. Okay? And then in 1949, that was followed by the book called 1984, which was about life in 1984. And life in 1984, they had erased all history. There were no books in libraries. There were no statues. There was no history historical artifacts whatsoever, so that the tyrannical government, so that the people that ran the place could do whatever they wanted, and no one could refer to anything in the past that had to do with reality, right?
Yes.
If I remember it correctly, it was a long time ago when I read it. I didn't read it in 1949, but pretty soon thereafter.
I was going to say. You were like in a crib or something.
It was read to me very early. It was read to me long before I had to read it in school. My mother. So, City Council voted to take down the statue and, like other cities in the country, move it to a more appropriate spot. I can't imagine what's more appropriate for our historical past than a public square where people passing by can learn what went on.
That's right.
Right?
And that's right.
Good, the bad, and the ugly. It's still our history. It's who we are.
That's right.
And if we don't learn from it, exactly as Mr. Santayana said, if we don't learn from it, we are sure to repeat it.
Yeah.
That's why, I'm sorry, I know you got something to say. Hang on.
Go ahead.
That's why I am convinced as of this week, we are going to have a civil war in this country soon. Because they're not going to stop taking down these statues because Doc Owen recommended it.
That's right.
They're not going to stop because anybody recommended it. Our mayor and city council announced 2 days ago to the media that the statue was being removed for such and such a reason. And oh, by the way, we're going to vote on it Thursday. What?
Yeah, right.
Give me a break.
Yeah. No.
You're not going to vote on it. You're going to announce it. You know, I don't know who they think they're whose chain they think they're pulling. Jeez, I wish I could talk like I really talk sometimes. Folks, you've got to muster the courage in your hometown to I mean, we're the 7th largest city. I mean, the big cities are doing it first. That's fine. Small town America, within the sound of my voice, please get your asses off of the couch and elect the right people that will do the right thing. Stop this. This has got to stop somewhere, or there's going to be huge armed conflict. And the conflict is not going to be between Democrats and Republicans.
Nope.
It's not going to be between the North and the South. It's not going to be between black and white. It's going to be between stupid and educated. And
go.
eventually, the educated are going to have had enough. Right now, the educated are a lot like me. They're jumping up and down and screaming and yelling about how wrong you are, but we're not to the point of taking up arms. Although now we can, you know that, right?
Yes.
We all have the Hillary defense.
That's right.
You have the absolute right. Everybody has one sorry son of a bitch in the neighborhood. Just go shoot him because nobody cares. The same reason they're not releasing Hillary's emails is because there's not enough public outcry for it, so we're just not going to do it.
Can you imagine that?
Well, there would be no public outcry for shooting a bad guy in the
Right
neighborhood.
and wrong has no meaning.
None whatsoever. Right along with history. It's whoever's in power. Read Animal Farm first, then read 1984. George Orwell. Look it up. I just looked it up on the internet. They are both completely available for free, chapter by chapter by chapter. Where was I? The point is, it's got to stop. And it's going to have to stop in small town America.
That's right.
That's where it's going to have. Big cities, we have
They're
no
gone.
control.
Big cities, they're gone.
Tyrannical Democrats run big cities. We've known that for 20 years.
And not only
They made a
Democrats,
smart
but,
move.
Yeah, they're Republican cohorts of the progressive movement.
Sure. That's exactly right. Well said. Thank you very much. It's about control.
That's what it is.
It's about control. It's not about common sense. It's not about what's good for the country as a whole. It's not about representing the people that voted them into office. It's about power and control, which eventually leads to money.
Yeah. And they think the American people are so stupid that they can't even decide what coffee to drink in the morning. They want to tell us that. It's along the same line. That's what they're trying to do. Control and power.
Yeah. And think TSA to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've greatly increased our security, haven't they?
Oh, yeah.
Nonsense. So, George Orwell, 1984, or Animal Farm first, 1984 next, right? And I'm here to tell you, if we don't get this done, sometime within the next 15 to 20 years, at the very most, we're going to have another civil war, and it'll be when the educated folks, or the folk, and I don't mean book educated, I don't mean college degrees, I mean self-educated, I mean self-interested, learn the truth. Don't misunderstand what I mean when I say educated. I'm not talking down, and I'm not talking you got to go to college. I don't care if you go to college or not. I don't care if you graduate from high school or not. But whatever you decide to do it based on a solid foundation of truth, with access to the internet and Google today, and all of the different things that you can do to earn a living. Be who you are. Be what you are best at. Be what you enjoy doing.
Yes.
But do it from a position of truth. And
Amen.
make sure your friends and neighbors and cohorts and peers do the same thing. This is not about, so I don't mean education like formal education. That's probably a bad use of the word. Not a bad use, but, just don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Informed. So thank you, Anna. So the war will be between the informed and the uninformed. It's exactly right. And I think when I wrote it, I did use the word informed.
Yeah.
I didn't use educated.
Right.
Sorry about that. Be informed. Pay attention. Stop this crap now.
Yep.
In your hometown. Get in their face before they even start thinking about it. I mean, I told you 6 months ago the big fight in San Antonio is going to be over the Alamo, and I can doggone see it coming now.
Yeah, that'll be next.
Oh, it's going to be next. And we may hear this Civil War may be started by Remember the Alamo all over again. Stranger things have happened.
They sure has.
And you're pressing the buttons of Texas. You're pressing the buttons of Texans. We've just been, we've just taken on Uncle Harvey and lived to tell about it.
That's right.
So bring it on.
Proud of Texans.
Very.
Yes.
And we have a right to be.
That's right.
And so does the United States have a right to be. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.